Can everybody hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Yes.
You hear us, Terry?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you too.
Okay. Burton, you ready? Okay, so we will call the Sunnyvale 4B Economic Development Board meeting for Tuesday, October 13th to order at 5:32 p.m. and open with a public forum. 4B Board of Directors invites citizens to address the board on any matter, including items on the agenda, except public hearings that are included in the agenda. Comments related to the public hearings will be heard when the specific hearing starts. Citizen comments are limited to 3 minutes unless otherwise required by law. The board is not permitted to take any action or discuss any items not on the agenda. The board may choose to place the item on a future agenda. Nobody's present. Anybody online?
There's no hands raised.
So we'll close the public hearing or public forum at 5:33. And we are going to actually table the next 2 items until after executive session. So we will, where's the appointment? Never mind, we're doing the oath of office first and then tabling the next thing, I'm sorry. So we have a new member, Miss Tina Chase. I'd like to welcome her to the board, and Burton will be swearing her in.
Virtually. Tina, good to have you. All right, Tina, I'll read this. If you would, just repeat after me. I, and state your name,
I, Tina Chase,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of the Sunnyvale 4B Economic Development Board
of the Sunnyvale 4B Economic Development Board
of the state of Texas,
in the state of Texas,
and will to the best of my ability
and will to the best of my ability
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the United States
of the United States
and of this state.
and of this state.
So help me God.
So help me God.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd also like to thank Member Torres for his years of service on the 4B and apologize for getting out of order on the agenda for tonight. So now all members are present. Now we will table the next 2 items and move on to number 4, discuss, consider, and approve the minutes from the September 14, 2020 board. Everybody had an opportunity to review, or if you need a couple minutes to do so. Any comments or questions?
I'm good.
Get a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve. This is member Anthony.
Motion made by member Anthony.
I'll second it.
Who's that? Sorry.
Bradford.
Moved by member Bradford. All those in favor, please state your name. Wise.
Anthony,
Bradford.
Chatter,
Nair,
Chase.
Motion passes unanimously. Move on to item number 5, discuss, consider, and approve the September 2020 financial reporting and related items. Hand it over to member Bradford.
All right, thank you. Bear with me just a moment. Okay. Sorry, I have to scroll down. Okay. So for the month of September, and just to clarify, the sales tax reported was $75,050.37, and staff can correct me, but I believe I normally say this month, but technically it's 2 months ago. So since there's a 2-month lag. And so that'll be more clear when we look at the sales tax graph that staff prepared. But at any rate, those were our revenues for this fiscal month that we're recording. And the expenses, we had quite a few expenses this month, paying out a few things, which totaled $167,559. And so we did have our routine payroll and maintenance agreements. Looks like we had some park maintenance done. We had concrete and some of the work done on the batting cages that we previously approved at Jobson. We also had another COVID-19 business incentive payout. Looks like we had a partial payment on the Parks Master Plan. And our paving project for Vineyard Park hit this month as well. So it was a busy month of writing checks for staff, it appears. And so our month-end balance and tentative fiscal year-end balance, fund balance is $3,063,797. That will be updated again in October and November as we collect the actual sales tax for August and September. So I didn't have any other questions or comments on the financials unless staff wanted to point out anything that I missed. Hello?
You said you're having technical difficulties. Good. Okay.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
yes.
Okay, I've lost one of my screens here. I don't know what's going on. It's kind of,
You just got to pull it up.
Okay, how about now?
You're good though.
oh, there, I found it. Sorry, you probably were sitting there looking at my face, making weird faces there. Sorry.
All that to tell you that I didn't have anything to add.
Okay, great.
On a positive standpoint, you pointed it out, but the total revenues are exceeding budget, and then the last few months they've exceeded the last several years. So hopefully that trend continues as we work out of the COVID changes. Barring any questions, can I get a motion to approve? I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second member Anthony.
Seconded by member Cash first. All those in favor, please state your name. Wise.
Anthony,
chatter,
Nair,
Hear you. Tina, did you vote?
Oh, sorry, yes, Chase, approve.
Motion passes unanimously. And we'll move on to item 6. Discuss, consider, and act upon an update on the fire station and Glacier Horse Barn projects, authorizing the town manager to terminate professional services agreement with Half and Associates for design services related to Glacier Park, in line with the town manager to negotiate and coordinate with Komatsu Architectural for professional design services related to the project. Hand it over to Burton, or town manager was on the line as well.
Yeah, I'm here. This item, we actually took also to the city council or the town council last night, just because we wanted to make sure that both boards were aware of where we are at with the Glacier Horse Barn project, and then as it relates to the fire station. So, and I'm going to give kind of more update than you probably want on the fire station, but it does have impact on the Glacier Barn project. So bear with me on that, okay? Basically, you know that on August 24th, the council voted to place the new fire station on the Glacier property. It'll take up probably less than 2 acres of the 37 acres. And the plan is to put it at the hard corner of Jobson and Tripp, so that it can benefit from entrances off of one road and exits onto the other road. It's kind of optimal layout for a fire station. So we've met with the fire station architect and we're working on floor plans. We've had all the firemen look at that, give feedback. We're in kind of the revision standpoint. And then our plan is to get a full survey of the entire property. And we did do a survey of just the part where the horse barn is going to be previously, but we're now going to go ahead and do a survey and topo of the entire parcel. And a lot of that is just really about making sure that we're able to plan well for drainage on that parcel, and to make sure that those ponds, that no work needs to be done on the ponds so that we don't negatively impact the surrounding neighbors. The next thing after that is we're going to issue an RFQ for a construction manager at risk. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that procurement process, but it's a little bit different. Normally we design something and then we go out to bid on it. In this situation, we'd issue an RFQ for a construction manager at risk, who is the general contractor that would handle the actual building of the project, but we bring them on in the beginning during the design phase so that they can help design it in a way that saves us money in the end. So as we're going along, they're giving us input into the design. So I think that's going to be really helpful. And it's one of the allowed procurement methods in the local government code. And it was recommended by our attorney as well. So now to switch gears and look at the horse barn. We have a subcommittee that's been working on this for over a year. Nikki's on that. Member Anthony is on that subcommittee with us. We'd gotten to a point where there were some preliminary drawings that depicted, a lot of the drainage and the flat work that was going to be done, and also a rendering of the actual barn. And if you recall, our contract with Half never really had them full on designing the barn. They were just going to do kind of a floor plan so that we could then go out to bid for somebody to do a design build of the actual barn. But Half was designing all the drainage, the sewer, the water, the driveways, the parking lot, all of that type of thing. So when we had our last meeting with them, the estimated cost, the preliminary cost estimates were about $800,000. So if you recall, you all have $500,000 budgeted in this year's budget to do this project. So it's coming back about $300,000 more. So when we met with both of the architect, Half and the architect for the fire station, we had 2 meetings with them where we had them together and really talking about how do these 2 projects work together. And one of my biggest concerns was just okay, how does because they really butt up against each other. How does the drainage work? How are they coordinating those projects together? And both of them express concern with that about, well, who's ultimately going to be responsible? Who's kind of the, I don't know, lead architect or engineer on the project? So because of that concern, we talked to HAF about, would you be willing to allow us to terminate our contract with you? All of the work that's been done would become available for our use. So we wouldn't lose anything, but we just wouldn't have to continue on with our contract with them. They agreed to do that. Remember, that's the same firm that we've been working with for the Rails to Trails project as well. So it's not like we're walking away from them. We just are changing on this particular project, which would allow the Komatsu, who is the architect, and then they have subcontracted engineers, to take the lead on the entire project. I see a lot of benefits with this. First of all, we'd have that coordination of the entire site work would all be done together instead of trying to piece two site plans together. We'd have some economies of scale. So one of the more higher priced items was the sewer connection for the horse barn. And what will happen now is, the fire station must bring the sewer line down to them. So now the horse barn could just tap into that line. There's also a whole bunch of residents that are along Trip that don't have access to sewer service right now. They're still on septic systems. So we're probably going to tie in that work as well, or at least designing that work so that when we bring that sewer line down, it makes sewer available to those residents on Trip as well. So, basically what we're proposing is to terminate our contract with HAF, to immediately issue a construction manager at risk RFQ. And the components of that would be the design and everything of the fire station, the same for the horse barn property. And then a third part would be making sure that that sewer line is designed so that we can tap into it for those residents on Trip. So they'd kind of piece those three together. And we would make it very clear in that each piece of that puzzle needs to be priced separately so that it's very clear what is being paid out of which funding stream, because none of the funding streams can, pay for each other. They're all very specific. So I kind of stop there and open it up for questions, but basically I'm bringing this to you since you did start the the contract with HAF. I want to make sure you're comfortable with terminating that and then rolling the project in with that overarching project.
Will the committee for the Stables project have a chance to meet with this new architect?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a little, excuse the pun, cart before the horse here, figuring out which order to do all of this in. But I have already given the architect for the fire station the rendering that you all picked for the horse barn. So they're already working on trying to, make that match what our vision was for the horse barn. But the other direction as well is if they're going to actually design the horse barn or work with the subcontractor who will be designing it, I need him to have that direct input from you. And I also talked to him about, and Nikki, remind me of her name, the horse specialist.
Yeah, I can't remember it right now either, but I was thinking that too, that do they have horse specific or equestrian specific experience? And do we need to consider having someone come in just to help with that part of it?
Yeah, and I mentioned that to them. One of the fire stations they did previously that I had gone to look at actually was surrounded by horses, which, I think from the very beginning made me think, oh, that's interesting. But I did specifically talk to them about that particular lady, the one that's been advising us on the HAF project, and said we probably would want to bring her on board in some capacity. And they were amenable to that.
Yeah, I would feel a lot more comfortable with that as well, since she's been involved in the beginning, and she was really one of the main reasons we went with half in the first place, because she had a good design sense, but also has a lot of knowledge about the horses and tack rooms and airflow and all those sorts of details you need to keep in mind when you're designing it.
Yeah, definitely. And I had thought the same thing. So I think we're on the same page with that.
Okay.
My question was from a financial standpoint in terms of terminating with half. Where are we on what
Um,
the finance of that contract, and is the new group amenable to completing through the current phases of the current contract before we?
Okay, so the original contract was for 42,000 plus some change total. And right now we've spent 28,570 with them. And we would not have to pay anything more to terminate that contract. So we would just walk away. I think Burton thought there might be another small invoice hanging out there, but generally that's where we are. And we wouldn't have to pay anything more to them than the work they've already done. So we don't have to buy out the contract. And everything that they did, we can use. So it's not like wasted, anything. They'll have to review it and see if they agree with it. I know in the preliminary drawing, the last one we got, that I think I brought to the Glacier Committee, it had a lot of a big drive. And I think when we looked at that, we thought, wow, that is a lot of money to spend on an entrance drive. And so when we looked at it with the architect, the new architect, there was a lot of talk about how could we value engineer that and change the design a little bit to save on money, because that was where a lot of the money was coming in, was, I think you call it flat work, all the concrete. And so they were looking at ways to improve on the preliminary design that was done. Does that answer your question, President Weiss?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we have roughly 13,470 that won't be spent with half. So does that transfer, or are we kind of done with this?
Yeah,
We're moving
no,
into
we can transfer it into the project. We actually are doing our rollovers in November. So I think Phyllis, it's already on the list, isn't it, to roll over any remaining funds from the project?
It is on the list, Susan.
Yeah, so that amount, whatever we didn't spend, could roll over towards the project cost. And really, my hope is that we can get the project in the end by having the construction manager at risk up front. We can get it, more in the realm of what you've budgeted. I mean, I don't have any guarantees to get it from 800,000 to 500. That's a big leap, but I'm hoping that we can make some good progress on cutting the cost to get it a little bit more in line with what has been budgeted. And once we get an estimated cost, and one of the things the construction manager at risk does is he gives a guaranteed max price. That's part of our the contract with them. So we'll know very early on if they're, what kind of range we're talking about for what this is going to cost. And then we'll have to discuss, how we move forward financially.
So just to make sure I understand, so Komatsu is doing the work, but we're looking for someone to oversee that work?
Well, what happens is normally you fully design something, then you go bid it out. And so that in that scenario, the construction manager at risk person, that firm, would bid on the project and go build it. But in this kind of project, what they do is they hire that construction manager at risk right now before, we have a floor plan, but we haven't even begun to do full-on design. And the reason for that is they act as a consultant to say, look, if you make those doors this wide instead of this wide, you're going to save a lot of money. Or, if you do overhead doors instead of the folding doors for the fire trucks to go out, it's $30,000 less per door or whatever. Those are just a few examples. but they give advice and have input into the design process so that we're controlling cost. And they'll also look at the project and they'll give a guaranteed maximum price of, hey, no matter what, this project, you won't pay more than this amount. So we know a year early how much the project is max gonna cost us. Does that make sense?
It does. I guess I'm trying to understand how and when was Komatsu chosen? I guess it just seems like,
So Komatsu was chosen back, I think it was December or January. So they've been under contract with the town since then, and for the fire station project. And they were brought on for the preliminary design, but in that RFQ and in their contract, it states that if we're happy with the work they've done, we can continue on with them and not issue a new RFQ for another design firm. So because of all the work that's been invested, I mean, council still has to vote on it when we do their contract, but it is our intention to continue with them throughout the next phase of the project, because it would just save a lot of time and work since they've already put so much into the project.
so I guess my question is if Komatsu has already designed it and Half and Associates has already done about half of the work for our design piece, why do we need to hire a whole new company to oversee design at this point? That's where I'm getting off.
Well, remember that your barn is not designed. There's a floor plan drawn, that's it. So there's no, blueprints, there's no design at all of your barn yet. The only thing that's really been done is like a survey of the property, engineering work to look at drainage, some preliminary design of the flat work, some preliminary, layout of how it ties into the sewer, where the fire hydrants are. So it's not fully designed whatsoever. It's just, there's a preliminary design, but all of that will transfer to Komatsu, and then they'll integrate that with the plan for the fire department.
Right, but has the fire station already been completely designed by Komatsu already?
No, they've done a floor plan for it, and then they've done preliminary engineering work for site selection. So that's the phase we're entering in, is the full-on design for the fire station. And in this case, they would incorporate what they would gain from Half on what they were looking at for drainage. But we would have this issue if we kept them separate, of how do they coordinate with each other? How do the two designs work together?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I'm just trying to understand it because I'm just of a curious nature, as you know. Yeah, it's just a little confusing because it sounds like we're bringing in a new company to do something that's already in the works with Komatsu even. I mean, I understand getting out of the Half contract, but is Komatsu going to quit the design process on the fire station?
No, they're going to do all of it. So Komatsu and their subcontracting, their engineers, all of the subcontractors will do all the design for the whole, they'll pick up where what Half gives them, but we would be hiring them in this situation to design the whole complex, the whole barn.
So you're saying the RFQ is going out to a company that's already been hired?
No. Let me clarify again. So Komatsu is already the hired architect for the fire station. We have to finalize a secondary contract. We originally contracted with them for preliminary design. It's a formality. We now have to bring back their final contract for phase 2, I guess you would say. So that's all going to happen. What the piece I think you're kind of, maybe it's not, I'm not making it clear, is that we're going to issue an RFQ for a construction manager at risk. And this is the thing where it's a different kind of procurement process. Normally we design the whole thing, then we go get a contractor and build it. In this scenario, we're bringing the contractor in, before everything is designed, so they can say, look, the way you're designing that is going to cost you a lot more money. If you did this differently, it's going to be a lot easier to build. It's going to cost you a lot less. So it's another party, another person, and it's somebody we would hire no matter what, but normally you hire them after you design. We're doing a procurement process where they're part of the design process. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, I guess
Yeah, no,
I think
I
I they were going to be Komatsu is going to be that construction manager risk.
No, Komatsu is still the engineer or the architect.
Okay.
The construction manager at risk is another third party.
Okay,
It's
I guess
another-
maybe there and I were both, I was thinking you were meaning they're going to do that.
No, they'll just be the like overseeing architect and engineers. But the construction manager at risk is the same as if we were bidding it out, but we're bringing them on at the beginning of the process. And, you know, everyone who has done construction manager at risk projects say that it really helps control cost. We know out of the gate what it's probably going to cost us in the end, which is really helpful, especially for your piece of the puzzle, because we're so far off right now. We got to figure out how to get those costs more in line with what we're thinking with the budget. And remember, we budgeted that amount because that's what HAF said, you know, what, a year ago, that it would be 500. So that's why we budgeted 500. And now the last estimate was 800. So my guess is it's going to come in somewhere between, but we won't know that until we involve this construction manager at risk.
So the construction manager at risk, it sounds like, I was thinking that they were being brought on more to help with the fire station.
It would be both.
Okay, so then how would they be paid? You know, would a percentage come from our budget and a percentage from the town's budget?
Yes. And so when we issue the RFQ, we're going to have them segment the pieces. So if they're, you know, talking about the sewer line out to Trip Road, then that piece needs to be segmented. If they're talking about fire station, segmented. If they're talking about the horse barn, that piece would be segmented. And I don't know what those costs are yet until we bid it out. But usually it's part of what, it's kind of part of what the construction cost would have been.
So we'll have an idea once you do the RFQ, what our cost would be to have this person.
Right. And so I'd be, you know, we'll issue the RFQ, and I don't need like an action to do that. I can just do that. But what happens is once we issue the RFQ, there's a couple steps, just like if you were hiring the original architect. And what I can do is include one of you on that committee that will review what the RFQ, who we're going to select for the RFQ is. And then we'll get pricing, because it's a two-step process. When you're doing the RFQ, you can't ask for costs up front. It's illegal. You have to wait, select the most qualified firm, and then negotiate costs after that.
Okay.
And that would come to you all for approval to award that contract, because that piece of
Susan, couple of, you know, probably comments or questions, right? So this individual that we are trying to, you know, hire, probably we can consider him as kind of a vendor neutral consultant who is going to oversee and help us to save and bring in efficiencies and optimize everything, so that end of this entire project, we could see a considerable amount of savings otherwise.
correct.
And it may also help because it may be safe to say that we don't have that kind of an expertise in-house
Correct.
to oversee all these things. So we can call him as kind of a consultant on a project manager to manage this on behalf of the city, right?
Yeah, that's a good depiction. And he's the one, he or she, the firm, would be who, when everything is designed, who works on getting all the subcontractors to do the work and would manage that aspect.
Okay, that makes sense. The other comment is like, you know, since it seems like Komatsu Architecture, they work with a lot of subcontractors. So would you, by considering that half associates already did some work, is it possible for them to work together as a subcontracting capability or anything like that, or they just wanted to walk away from it?
Yeah, we actually full on discussed that when I had both of them together. And Komatsu has an engineering firm that they use for all of these projects that they feel specializes in these types of projects. So, sorry about the dog. It's a killer Shih Tzu. I'm so sorry. We openly discussed that possibility. Because I kind of thought the same thing. Why don't we just put them under Komatsu and we'd be done? And I think everyone kind of left the room agreeing that they wanted to stay with the engineering firm that they're comfortable with. And with the magnitude of this project, when you put both pieces together, I want them to do what their comfort level is. And I didn't have any pushback from half on that. So I walked away feeling very much like that's probably what would be optimal. And I had of course, the town engineer involved in all those meetings.
Okay. One last comment is since it seems like that horse expert or that specialist, so was that person through half, then once we terminate the contract, is it possible for us to contract with that individual at a different capacity? Is that without conflicting anything? Is that possible?
Yeah, I don't see a conflict, and I actually mentioned it in the meeting, the need to do that. I have not personally reached out to her, but I will, just to make sure that, she's willing to continue with us. If not, I'm sure we can find another expert, but my preference would be to stay with her since she's been working with us already. And I think the committee has a lot of comfort with her. So that would be my intention, is to bring her on board as a consultant.
She's also a third party. She doesn't work for half directly. She was brought on by them when they were bidding the project as an equestrian expert they were hiring to help with it.
Okay. There could be some non-conflict or some, things between them. Just wanted to make sure that.
Yeah, I'll call David McCaskill, who's our contact, and just make sure if there's any thought that she might think that there would be, that they would release her from that.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you. Good point.
Yeah, as long as it reduces complexity and, we can make it a little bit more agile and less teams involved, I'm all for it.
Thank you, sir.
Can we just sign $500,000 over to the town and then let the town just manage the whole thing with the committee?
Yeah, I can float that to the council if they'd rather do that, and if that's what your desire is, but I do need to run that through them first.
Instead of trying to segment things and do all this, if 4B just came up with, this is our max, to understand things or whatever it is, and just transferred it over and let you all.
It's not a bad idea. It would make things a lot simpler, that's for sure.
Working on the design and all that, so there's input still all involved.
Yeah.
So to me, it sounds like this is really just step one in a multi-step process where we're just letting Komatsu finish up what half had started while also doing the fire station, so it gets combined, and then we move into this RFQ and all the other stuff comes. Right?
Yeah. And I started out just sending you all an email about this, and then I realized when you start writing it all out, it's much more complicated than in my head than it seems. So I did want to make sure you all kind of really understood what the steps were and why we were doing it, and making sure you were supportive of it.
Right. And they still needed to, in addition to the horse barn, the trails and all that stuff that wrap around, all that's got to be integrated with it too.
Yeah, and right now that wasn't included in phase one, but that's something that I feel like we should look at least the trail that would run right in front of the horse barn, kind of down Jobson. I would love to see that incorporated into this phase. So, I'll be talking to the architects about what's the likelihood that we could do that, and and stay under budget. So I think that'd be really nice. But, the other things that aren't included in phase one are the fencing, the rest of the trail, the sod and the turf. Those things were not included in phase one right now.
I'm in agreement with the termination of the contract to finish up this process, and the rest of it's all still in flux.
Okay. So I was hoping that we could take action. So if you want to just, if somebody makes a motion to approve this item as presented, I think otherwise it's kind of complex to repeat everything.
Any other questions?
I'm good.
Make the motion to approve agenda item report air-20-240.pdf is item number 6 on the agenda as presented.
Now second, Member Shatter.
Motion made by member Wise, seconded by member Shatter. All those in favor, please state your name.
Anthony,
Shatter,
Bradford,
Chase,
Nair.
Wise, Nash, motion, Philip, motion passes unanimously. So we will move on to item number 7. And thank you for that detailed update. So, which is item number 7's update on project. So Burton.
All right, can y'all hear me?
Yep.
So since last month, we haven't had any more of the COVID-19 business incentive request. It did, as member Bradford pointed out, that last application that we had that was funded came out of.
I'm having a little trouble hearing now. Is that just me?
No.
How about now?
yeah, it's going in and out.
Take the mask off.
How about, is that better?
Yep.
Yeah.
So the most recent COVID-19 business incentive request, that was the last one we've received. And I believe, Phyllis, is it still, there's still 20,000, right?
We still have $20,000. Has not been.
Right.
I guess Glazier, we've kind of gone over in detail.
We have.
Is it possible to supply us with the businesses that have been approved so far? Like an email or something?
I can.
Because there's a few that I'm thinking about that I don't know where they're at in the process.
Those businesses that did receive COVID incentives are listed on your, there's documented in your file.
Okay.
It gives a list of those. You can tell probably by the dollar amount. They range from $2,500 to $5,000.
Burton, a quick comment on that COVID-19 business incentive program, right? So we, it's been going on for the COVID is going on for some time now. And I was wondering, because business closed, open, some discussion that's, everything is back to normal, not normal, all those things are going on. So I was wondering, what was the last business applied for it and what was their story, kind of generic, if you could provide some insights, just trying to understand what kind of businesses are struggling right now, if that is something that you could share. You don't have to name them, just.
The last business that was approved that we received application for was a convenience store.
Douglas Distribution Retail.
Mhm.
Lone Star Food, which is Valero.
You know, a lot of we had some businesses that applied, reached out to them for additional information, and we never received that back. So I know there were 3 applications that I reached out to multiple times to help the committee make that decision, and we just never heard back. You know, we are getting a lot of, I know that our program started in May, so that what you were talking about, that's how long this has been going on. There's some more information coming out from Small Business Administration in terms of basically, sorry, I lost my words there. Essentially, they're forgiving loans up to $50,000. That's information that's coming out from the SBA. And I know that quite a few of the applicants that we did fund were getting some assistance from the Paycheck Protection Plan, things like that. So, but I also know that they ran, you know, SBA ran out of money. So I'm not quite sure, you know, we've all kind of wondered to ourselves, why did we not get more folks interested in this? I know it's been publicized. I know Eric has pushed it out on Facebook, social media. It's on the website. And of course, you know, you all made the process real simple in terms of minimal paperwork to get the process started. So I'm not quite sure what the reasoning is and why we didn't have better participation.
Terry, do you have any insight you could provide from the chamber's point of view? Terry Shatter?
I'm sorry, I missed that. I have an outage. I was on my other phone. I apologize.
That's okay. We were talking about the COVID-19 business relief, and Chris had been asking about most recent applications and if Burton had any feedback from the companies applying. And then I just thought maybe you could chime in and see if you have any
Okay.
updates from your end.
Yeah, no, we haven't gotten any feedback from the membership. Actually, the folks that I got to apply, some of them weren't chamber members, a few of them were, but and the ones that I talked to that didn't apply said they were going to leave the dollars on the table for other companies. That they weren't in like dire need. So.
You know, if business is as usual, that is a good problem, right? You know, we don't have to worry much about the economy, about our city, which is great. You know. And thanks, Burton.
I guess if we get any more, we'll process them as they come and go from there. So if you know of anybody in need that meets the, as you said, the minimum requirements that we have, which are pretty generous, pretty easy to achieve, you know, we'll still review them and approve. So far, everybody that's applied, that submitted all the information that was requested, has been applied, been approved. The only ones that haven't gone through are people that didn't follow up with the information that was requested. So, this next is Jobson.
So we did get the concrete poured. We had a few minor issues with the batting cage in terms of how we were going to get everything here on time, timed in with the concrete, but we did make it happen. I'm trying right now, I'm still trying to source a piece of AstroTurf or outdoor carpet. prefer it to be something that doesn't soak up water to put on top of the pad. Once we get finished with that, we'll finish constructing, basically putting the top of the cage on. So it just makes it a whole lot easier when you're using glue and everything like that, and carpet. It's, 15 feet wide and 75 feet long. If we could not have the net in the way, it would go a lot easier. So, but locally, it's hard to find that size of a piece of AstroTurf at Home Depot or something like that. So as soon as I get that sourced, we'll get that finished up. So, but I think it's going to be good. A lot of folks use jobs, and especially with COVID and the Sarissa playing baseball and things like that. So hopefully we'll get that wrapped up pretty quick.
And rails to trails, we're going to discuss that in executive session. One thing I've noticed lately, the cross-country team has been running it from Nance all the way to 80 and back. Somebody mowed it, so I don't know if that was the school district that did or Luminate or what, but they mowed it so the cross-country kids could use it. So that's kind of neat to see it being used.
I've actually been corresponding with somebody they had requested information about a running, if we offered any kind of running clubs for kids and youth, and I'm sure adults too, but I've kind of directed them to the school. I wasn't sure if the school had any kind of program like that, but like I said, we've been corresponding back and forth, so we'll see. They were asking for potential places, and they had to make a reservation, things like that. Of course, right now, as it stands currently, groups of 10 or more. So if you're going to stage some sort of cross country, if you're going to have a check-in, a finish line, if you're going to have folks gathered, things like that. That's just information that I shared with the person I've been working with. So.
I noticed earlier this week over at Samuel Farms on the south side of 80, there was a cross-country meet going on. And we do mow cross-country trails in Samuel Farms North still. So anybody that wants to run on natural grass can go over there and enjoy themselves. Parks Master Plan.
So Parks Master Plan, I think last month when we met, you all still hear me fine?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I think last month we had just wrapped up the community survey. We wound up with 29% of the postcards. We had a response rate of 29%. Some of some information, I guess, things that jumped out on that was of the respondents that responded to the survey, 37% of them indicated that they didn't have children. So I thought that was an interesting statistic. And there's a lot of information. There's a comprehensive report. I'd be happy to share that with y'all. I can send it out, email it to you. There is a lot of data in there. But in terms of Susan and I have had a lot of conversation in terms of how do we get this project back on track. With COVID hit and everything, essentially we chose a consultant, and then it wasn't but a month later and everything changed. So I've been talking with Hunter back and forth with MHS, and he's recommended some kind of like focus groups, smaller groups of people at our choosing, whether it's community leaders, school district, things like that. And you know, if we could say, schedule a day of some in-person meetings in conjunction with maybe a larger effort on Zoom. You know, obviously, a Zoom meeting could get lengthy, you know, because ideally you don't want to go into it. You obviously want the input of people, but we've got to figure out how do we dial that in, not and have, you know, folks represent themselves and their ideas, but not cut them off, but at the same time move that process. So we're still working on some things like that. You know, his recommendation, obviously they do master plans. They do only parks master plans. That's one of the reasons we selected him as a consultant. But he's been reaching out to some of the other communities that he's working with, some of his colleagues, and basically that's what they're recommending is, you know, try to schedule a day of meetings, 6 to 8 people, so that we can socially distance, and then try to do some sort of remote meeting. But
So I kind of set them up like parent-teacher conferences, but a little bit longer with a group of 6 to 8. And then way back, we talked about I don't remember what it was called, but it was at the beginning of the school year or in this summer, whatever that software program is the school board used. And they gave that presentation and you were able to provide answers and stuff without talking. And then you could send an email comments, but it plotted everything into common areas and then they had that feedback. Don't any of y'all remember what that was called? Or we can just reach out to Doug or Christy or Emily to find out what that was.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was called, but I do remember that I liked how it worked because we were all listening, all the parents were listening on this Zoom call. And when we had questions, we would go to this other software and type in our questions, and then the software would calculate the most commonly asked questions and pull those to the top. So the panel at the school could then address the most commonly asked questions from the parents without parents having to raise their hand and click in and actually speak.
Yeah, I can check with Emily on that, Eric.
I know we've used something in the past. I don't know if it's similar to what you're thinking, but it was called Slido. You can type questions from your phone wherever you're at while you're listening to a presentation, and then the presenter has the opportunity to read them and respond for you.
That may have been what it was because it had some name I wasn't familiar with, but that rings a bell for some reason.
it's like a live polling option, something like that.
But it was separate from the presentation, so presenters didn't get interrupted and somebody else was managing the Q&A.
Yeah, I think it's a website, and then you enter in a code to be able to comment on whatever presentation you're watching or phone conference. So I'm not sure if that's it.
Well, if we can get everything back on track, you know, one of the issues that Hunter and I discussed with our timeline is this time of year we start getting busy. Everybody starts, you know, Thanksgiving rolls into Christmas, and before you know it, it's January. So if we can, you know, hopefully we can try to aggressively get this stuff scheduled. If we can, you know, there's still potential that in March we could be in the review process with meetings with the public, just with the community in general. Again, I don't know, you know, what that looks like. And, I wish I had a better solution, but it would be easier if we could all just meet.
Right. Yeah, I say we follow up after this and identify some dates. You know, oddly enough, Thanksgiving and Christmas are going to be different for most people, and
Sure.
people are looking for excuses to get out in small groups. So you might have a really good turnout for these small group type meetings.
President Weiss, this is Susan. Can I just comment on this?
Yes.
I just really feel strongly that we need to push the consultant to move forward. You know, we can't apply for certain grants without this plan done. So I just hate, you know, I want to do a quality job. I don't want to compromise quality, but I'd really like to see us push as hard as we can to keep it moving forward.
I agree. That's why I like the idea of identifying a few dates on the calendar to do these small group type settings, that whoever's supposed to facilitate them. And then we can work with the school board, get that information, and then identify a night or a day, 2 days, whatever, to do the Zoom type thing with that polling questionnaire. And go on from there, I think, unless they recommend something different.
Yeah, I think there's one of the things I visited with Hunter about, there's two strategies on this in terms of how folks are compiling their data to put in their plans. You know, on one hand, some folks like to get all of the information up front and still leave opportunities for changes along the way. And those are normally where you're going to get your in-person meetings where people make changes, or maybe the consultant goes back and changes something. His recommendation is that we get these meetings done, we rely on the information from the survey, and we build around that information as opposed to new stuff that's coming in that could change it. Because on the back end, in terms of the maps and things like that, you know, they've had that information for some time. So finalizing the additional information, the additional input gives them the ability to move forward and present us with a draft.
Okay. Any other questions on that?
Is this, if my memory serves me correct, is this a project where we set aside around $25,000 for this year? Is that sound right?
I believe it came in quite a bit lower than that budget for this master plan.
Okay.
I
So we
think
did set aside quite a bit for it, but it,
Yeah, we budgeted 100,000, but I think the quote was way lower than that.
Okay.
future agenda items. Anybody? This time of year, we usually like to talk about holiday lighting and all that kind of stuff, but with Collins going on, outside of out here in front of the building, we had budgeted we bought the new tree. I don't know what else we might do until Collins is done.
so. We've got a plan. Everything's still going to go up as planned. We've been working internally. Our group's been talking about a drive-through event here at Town Hall. Our events coordinator over here. So the new tree is going to go up. The plan is to, instead of concentrating everything like we normally would on the front lawn, we would space that out. And obviously we'll have to add some pieces to that. But we should actually, probably next week or the week after, we'll actually start putting up lights. So.
You mentioned the drive-through. I was just curious how that would work out here, or if it needed to move to Town Center Park.
So we're thinking about like a drive-through movie event, like Christmas movies. each department will have like a different station, and they're going to set up their stations in line with like a Christmas movie. And the vehicles in the parking lot will be parked at Town Center Park. And we
Okay.
think there's enough room for a vehicle to turn around in those parking spaces.
Cool.
Hmm.
I was just curious about a drive-through when there's only one entrance and the same entrance as the exit. So, yeah. Or anything else for future agenda item?
We'll have some cones down there to direct, give some boundaries for turning around.
Some of our new Sunnyvale finest, the direct traffic.
Burton, did y'all meet with the city of Dallas about Samuel Park and our contract?
I've been in contact with them, yes. We've got some things that we're trying to work through. I'm glad you mentioned that. We're in the process. Phyllis and I were talking about it today. We've got some changes that we need to make, some amendments now that our police department's online. Just, language changes from the sheriff's office to the police department. But there's been some other discussion or other questions that come up about
Hey, Burton, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just be careful and make sure you're on agenda, okay?
Future agenda items.
Yeah, well, you can't discuss future agenda items. You can just tell us what you want and we'll put them on the agenda. My apologies.
As a future agenda item.
Thanks for the reminder.
Thanks. Sorry about that.
And I do have one thing I want to mention for the chamber. We're having a trunk or treat event. It's going to be a drive-through event at Town Center Park on Friday, October 30th from 5 to 7 p.m. And so we're working through the details. We've changed that to a drive-through event because of the COVID. We've got quite a few sponsors and several businesses that are going to hand out candy, social distancing, using gloves, et cetera, and making it a drive-through event.
That's neat.
A while back, we talked about on 4A board about monuments in the town. Now that we're redoing Collins Road, could we talk about that again on a future agenda item? I don't know what the plan is, but this might be a time to kind of sort of go back over that and revisit that.
Like the entry monument.
Yeah, Sunnyvale, welcome to Sunnyvale kind of thing.
Hey, Eric, before you move on to the next agenda item, just to let you know, I put in the chat what that collaboration tool was that Sunnyvale used. It's called the Thought Exchange.
Cool.
If we want to use that for a future survey or a feedback from citizens regarding the Parks Master Plan, I should say.
Okey-doke. Thank you. Barring no other future agenda item or event topics, we will, can I get somebody to make a motion to move into executive session, recess into executive session?
I'll make the motion to recess.
Shatter will second.
Bradford, seconded by member Shatter. All those in favor, please state your name. Wise.
Bradford.
Shatter.
Chase.
Believe that was everybody. So at 6:41 p.m., we will move into executive session. So y'all have your instructions on how to dial in what to do, or Burton can remind us all. Okay, so we will reconvene out of executive session at 7:05 PM. There will be actions to be taken, but first we will have no action taken on Ray Hubbard downtown concept. But we will be taking action on Project PC. First off, moving forward, public hearing. Open or continue public hearing considering testimony and other information provided. Close public hearing. So agenda item report AIR-20-238. Hold a public hearing, discuss, consider, and act upon resolution 20-57, a resolution of the 4B Economic Development Corporation declaring Project PC a project and approve funding for an economic development incentive and performance agreement for Project PC in an amount not to exceed $75,000 to promote new or expanded business development in compliance with section 505.158 of the Texas Local Government Code. Nobody's present here. Anybody online?
No, sir.
No hands raised online, so we'll close the public hearing at 7:06. And then move forward with discussing and considering to act upon resolution 20-57, a resolution of 4B Economic Development Corporation declaring Project PC a project. All the same. Any discussion, questions? Barring any questions, can I get a motion to approve resolution 20-57?
Motion made to approve.
Motion made by member Cash
I second that. Nair.
and by member Nair. All those in favor, please state your name. Wise.
Anthony,
Nair.
Chase.
Motion passes unanimously. So no other agenda items for tonight. So we will adjourn at 7, or can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made by member Cash, seconded by member Wise. All those in favor?
Cash.
Chatter.
Wise.
Nair.
Bradford.
Chase.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody.
No.
Nair. Thank you.
Aye.
Have a great week.
You too.